Hi and welcome to another Travel with Carl fly review. Today I'm leaving the tropical seaside of Townsville after an overnight stay. Last night I took a sunset scooter ride along the Strand. Such a fun way to end my trip. I had a good night's sleep and was up and ready for the airport at 6 am. I then discovered that there aren't many Ubers or taxis operating in Townsville this hour. I finally got an Uber after a 22-minute wait. Yep, I timed it. Fortunately, Townsville is small and there was no traffic. Once I was in the Uber, I arrived at the airport in 10 minutes. The terminal that greeted me was very quiet with very few people around. I'm flying Rex and there was no queue for check-in. At check-in, I was advised that today's flight had only 6 passengers departing Townsville. That's right, just 6 of us. So where am I going today? Today's flight takes me to Mount Isa on what aviation geeks call a Rex milk run flight. I'll be travelling inland from the coast across northwestern Queensland. We start today in Townsville before flying across to stop in Hughenden, then Richmond, followed by Julia Creek, before finally arriving in the mining city of Mount Isa. At least that's what we're supposed to do. Unfortunately, and I'm one of the few people who would call this unfortunate, today's flight will skip Julia Creek. This is because no one's getting on or off at Julia Creek, so we're just going to overfly it instead. After clearing security, the terminal emptied even more as the Qantas flight to Cairns boarded. I flew that route later on my trip and I put a link to the review in the description below. I grabbed some quick breakfast from the terminal bar. Most of the gates are upstairs, but the waiting area is downstairs, surrounded by a bar cum cafe, a tech-to-go store, and the obligatory airport convenience store cum newsagent. I headed upstairs to the gate and watched the one cargo flight taxiing. We boarded about 10 minutes behind schedule, but with only 6 of us to board, we were all on board within minutes of the boarding commencing. As we were boarding, the Qantas flight that had departed for Cairns was taxiing back to the gate with mechanical problems prior to takeoff. It's a short walk out to the Saab 340 aircraft where the same crew I had the day before from Longreach greeted me as I boarded. The route I'm flying today is another air route regulated and subsidised by the Queensland Government. While the destination is Mount Isa, it also connects Hughenden, Richmond and Julia Creek to both Mount Isa and Townsville. This route is flown on a Monday, Wednesday and Friday in both directions. I had booked the route specifically because it had so many stopovers to be able to visit as many regional airports as possible. Yes, I'm an av geek. Unfortunately for me, as I said before, there was no one stopping at Julia Creek nor anyone getting on, so we ended up overflying Julia Creek and flying direct from Richmond to Mount Isa. On departure from Townsville, we took off to the east. We made a left turn and tracked up the coast for a few minutes. The 7:30am departure was great for those beautiful sunrise colours across the water and Magnetic Island viewed just off the coast. We then made another left-hand turn and crossed the coast. The coastal landscape below was undulating and covered in trees, with gorges relatively dry and lined with sandy riverbeds. The gorges wound through the hills. While this landscape looked dry, it was lush when contrasted to the dry and flat regions we'd soon be flying over. Now let's talk about the aircraft we're flying on today. Regional Express fly a fleet of Saab 340B aircraft to many regional destinations, and my flight was operated by this type. The aircraft I was flying on was 25 years old after being delivered new to American Eagle in 1996. It went into storage in 2007 before being picked up by Rex in 2009. If you're looking for the newest and freshest aircraft, this isn't the one for you, but for a 25-year-old bird it looks pretty okay. I know Rex are widely criticised for the age of their fleet, but there aren't many alternatives available for these very thin routes. The cabin has 34 seats spread across 11 rows with 3 seats in each row, except for the last row which has a 4th seat, making it a bit like the back seat of a bus. In some aircraft the toilet is in the rear, however on this aircraft it's at the front of the cabin. Now it's time to talk about the seat. I, like many av geeks, have an obsession with sitting as close to the front of the plane as possible. I booked seat 3A when I made the booking for this reason, and paid extra for the privilege. However, due to the low passenger load, yep, all 6 of us, I need to be moved for weight and balance purposes. Hopefully that pizza I ate last night doesn't push the plane out of balance. This landed me in the twin seats in 10C by the window, the second last row. Given the low load, I had the extra seat next to me free, which allowed me to stretch out. Now I'm more familiar with the Saab 340 aircraft, I actually prefer sitting down the back, as anything in front of row 8 has an obstructed view of the scenery due to the wing and the engine. Given my in-flight entertainment is staring out the window and watching the world pass by, a window seat with a good view is a win for me. In previous blogs, I've recommended to sit on the solo seats if you're travelling alone. However, if the flight isn't full and you can snag 2 seats on the right hand side of the aircraft, then I'd opt for the double seat instead of the single side of the plane. There's a lot more room to spread out thanks to the armrest between the seats folding up, and there being no centre bar between the two seats at foot level, meaning there's a lot of leg room available to stretch out in. I comfortably fitted both my bag and feet in the footwell and still have room to spare. As I discovered earlier, the rear row of seats can become what I possibly call the only flatbed seat on a regional aircraft anywhere. I tried it out late in the flight and found it to be quite comfortable to travel, or at least take a few photos. Unlike a normal flight where you take off and you land and that's it, this flight had stopovers. Our first stopover was at Hughenden. After landing in Hughenden, 2 of the 6 passengers deplaned. One of the passengers takes the flight every week and seemed to know the crew pretty well. On the ground, the right engine was kept running to allow for a quick turnaround. With no new passengers joining us, the luggage was quickly offloaded. The first officer did a walk around the plane to make sure the wings were still attached, and within about 10 minutes, we were taxiing for takeoff. With a slight crosswind, we were able to take off in the opposite direction to which we landed, allowing us to be pointed in the general direction of our next stop after takeoff. We barely levelled off before the now 4 passengers began our descent into Richmond. It felt like we'd just joined the downward leg of the circuit, and we flew the pattern and its easy landing into Richmond after only 20 minutes in the air. Again, the right engine was left running to speed up the turnaround, and this time the remaining 3 passengers disembarked, leaving me as the only passenger on board. Time for a private plane experience. After we left Richmond, I was the only passenger in the cabin. At this point, I felt like I'd hired a plane to somewhere really important just for me. It was somewhat eerie being the only person on board, but Latia served me some extra snacks and we got chatting until the seatbelt sign took her away for her duties. Turns out she also likes watching travel and flight review bloggers online, so we chat about those and how they manage to make a living out of doing it. I certainly don't. If you somehow stumbled onto this review, Latoya, thanks for the great flight. Now's probably a good time to talk about the in-flight service. The cabin was staffed by Latoya, who did an amazing job making sure everyone was looked after. Latoya was a cabin crew member on my flight the day before from Longreach, and I later learned there were only 2 cabin crew based in Townsville. After takeoff out of Townsville, we were offered a choice of sweet or savoury snacks, followed by a tea and coffee service. Water was also provided. The sweet snack was a Carmen's gingerbread oat slice, which was nice although pretty crumbly, which made it a bit of a messy thing to eat on a flight. The savoury snack was salt and vinegar flavoured rice crackers. I went with the sweet snack because I love gingerbread. After our first flight, we were asked if we wanted other snacks or drinks, with most of the cabin declining the offer. On the 3rd flight, I did get another cup of tea and had one of each of the snacks. They were delicious. The seatbelt sign came on as we began our approach to Mount Isa. I was given a personal thanks over the PA for flying with Rex from our lovely cabin crew. We landed on the north, had a short taxi to the gate. The aircraft door was quickly opened, and then I thanked the crew for my private chauffeur service from Richmond to Mount Isa. Being the only passenger, I had a personal escort across the tarmac by the ground crew and out the gate into the terminal. As there was no other flights arriving or departing, I was the only person in the terminal as well. My bag arrived shortly after on its solo journey around the carousel. My 3-stop come 2-stop journey was complete. While I was disappointed I didn't get to land in Julia Creek, I'd soon see Julia Creek anyway, as I picked up my rental car and started driving back the way I'd just flown. Made it to Mount Isa, and I was the only person on the flight, and I'm the only person in the airport terminal as well. Now I'm just going to remember who I booked the car with before I make the drive out to Julia Creek. Hope you enjoyed the flight. I'll see you on the next one. Bye. I hope you've enjoyed this flight review on my journey from Townsville to Mount Isa on board a wrecked Saab 340. If you like this kind of contact, hit the subscribe button, check out my channel, and check out my blog at www.travelwithcarl.com. Thanks for watching, I'll see you soon.